where we will be focused today is here at the Adult and Family Shelter, which serves about 600 people a year with a team of 24. We like to think of our team here at Pillars, 70 staff, as much bigger than those 70 staff. If you're here this morning, you also are part of the Pillars team. And what we'd like to do now is give you a chance to let us know who you are, what role you play, what connection you have to Pillars. So I'm going to ask Ayanda if she'll launch the poll, because it looks like I've lost the ability to do that. Ayanda, are you able to launch the poll?
Yes.
Well, we'll come back to the poll. I can get all of the behind the scenes stuff worked out while the people you're really here to hear from are presenting. So let me take a moment to introduce the folks who will be talking to you about back to school for children who are experiencing homelessness. I'll start with Christine McCain. She is the Pillars Adult and Family Shelter Manager. She oversees our services and personnel at those 24 folks I mentioned, who serve some 80 clients a day. Christine started with Pillars in 2015 and has spent 6 years in various roles, working daily with adults and children experiencing homelessness. Her passion is to support those who live with financial instability, and that is what drew her to Pillars. Her professional gift is helping others develop their strengths, overcome barriers, and gain self-confidence. She enjoys spending time in nature with her son when she's not here at Pillars and encouraging his love of learning. We are also very fortunate to have with us 2 of our partners in this work of serving children experiencing homelessness. Pam Fransky is an Appleton Area School District Administrator. She oversees the Title I program, Birth to 5 outreach, Even Start Thirsty programming, and is the Director of Homeless and Foster Care. She's been with the Area School District for 23 years, the last 6 years in this current role. She also is a member of Pillars Board of Directors and has been so since October of 2019. She currently serves on our program committee, and her passion is to support children and families. That's at the root of her personal and professional aspirations. She and her husband are active members of St. Matthew Lutheran Church, and she currently is on the outreach team. She enjoys spending time with friends and family, especially her 4 grandchildren, traveling and gardening. And then last but not least, Christy DeChamps. She is a school social worker with the Appleton Area School District and is the district-wide McKinney-Vento Homeless Foster Care Support Coordinator. She is a master's level social worker with a professional licensure as a Department of Public Instruction school social worker and State of Wisconsin Advanced Practice social worker. She has 24 years of professional experience in the field of social work. She relocated to Appleton in 2007, is the happy wife and mom to 2 great kids, Mason age 14, Morgan age 11. They pandemic whose name is and lifting others up and being an advocate for justice and positive. Every vote over to Christine. Christine, I hope you're ready for this. It's pretty exciting. You should be able now to advance the slides yourself. If you can figure out how to, the lower left-hand corner is where there's pointers backward or forward. And you can take it away with a student's life at Pillars Adult and Family Shelter.
Okay, so we first
need to unmute.
I did unmute. Can you hear? Go over a little background for those who are not familiar at all. Sorry, I'm losing my controls a little. This is unfamiliar to me. Okay, so with a capacity of 78, the Pillars Adult and Family Shelter serves single adults and families who are experiencing homelessness and meet the eligibility criteria. With the setup that we do have and the layout of shelter, there are many times that we're actually serving over 80 clients at any given time. People often think there's a safety concern having single adults and families in the same shelter, but we do take steps to ensure the safety and security of everyone in shelter. So prior to entering shelter, all adults go through a background check process. Adults and family units are not eligible for shelter unless they can pass that background check process. So some things that staff look for when completing a background check are violent offenses, sexual crimes, and open warrants. And then while in shelter, everyone is expected to maintain absolute sobriety and appropriate behaviors. So when families move into shelter, they're actually provided all of their basic needs, including bedding, hygiene items, which can include the sheet sets, pillows, blankets, body wash, down to toothbrushes, toothpaste, lotion, hair care products, and so much more. So the adult and family shelter has a close relationship with the community when we are in need of those items for families and adults in shelter. We reach out for donations. We also have a very close working relationship with the United Way Fox Cities Diaper Bank. Through this partnership, we're able to ensure that each family has the diapers and wipes they need throughout their shelter stay. There are times that families will enter shelter with a baby or a baby is born into shelter. And in these instances, we're able to provide pack and play and stroller for those families so the kids have a safe space to sleep instead of sleeping on one of our bunks with their instead of co-sleeping. When families or young children are given a stroller or a pack and play, we actually encourage them to take those with them when they move into housing. Really anything we give them when they're here in shelter, we encourage them to take with them when they move into housing. Let me see. How do I bring up the, oh, found it. So what does shelter look like? So, well, there are single adults roomed in more of a dorm style setting. Families each get their own room for privacy and to honor their unique family dynamic. The shelter consists of 15 rooms. On average, 10 of those rooms are actually reserved for families. Within shelter, we strive to keep some separation between single adults and family units. So a family room in shelter consists of 1 to 3 bunk beds, with each bed having a corresponding dresser or like wardrobe unit. And we can add cots and pack and plays for larger families. We actually even have the ability to adjoin 2 rooms if we have a rather large family in shelter. Single men in the majority of families are roomed on the first floor together with single men on the second floor, where we do have a few family rooms, but we try to keep them separate. Even so, all families are encouraged to spend their free time together on the first floor, where they have access to our lending library. They can have communal toys to play with, watch TV, work on their schoolwork, and kind of support each other in shelter. We find that a lot of our families really do work together to support each other through their shelter journey. You can imagine in shelter, it would be difficult thinking of before school, getting everybody's schedule in line and having access to the dining room for breakfast or showers so everybody's clean and ready for the day. But we do find that our families, again, kind of work together and make the chaos work, and it's a beautiful thing. In the dining room, we do separate our dinner times. So we have the families and women eating dinner together. And again, that provides more space for the families to spread out and kind of have their own family unit at dinner together like they would at home. So then the men are eating dinner at a separate time than the families. So we do have booster seats and high chairs, just like you would see at home. So little kiddos aren't struggling in shelter to eat their meals. One of the main difficulties in shelter is dinner time. Thinking about, we have a very structured setting where dinner is from 5:30 to 6 for families, and This is a routine that we're asking families to adjust to within our facility, where maybe their family wouldn't eat dinner until 7 o'clock if they were housed. So that can be a bit of an inconvenience, but we do our best to work with them to make sure that we can support them as they adjust to this new routine. So while clients are in shelter, there are a number of staff positions that are providing direct services to them. The building is staffed by shelter client advocates 24 hours a day. Shelter client advocates, or as we call them, SCAs, are the staff who are having daily contact with those staying in shelter. So they are adding families to the wait list. They're helping to problem solve when there's not space in shelter. They're moving families into shelter and supporting families throughout their shelter journey. The shelter client advocates support families if conflict arises with others staying in shelter, which is seemingly unavoidable in such close living quarters. Shelter client advocates oftentimes find themselves, with the help of volunteers, helping kids with homework, doing a craft night. They'll put together a movie night, set up coloring contests, holiday themed coloring contests, and really go the extra mile to support kiddos and families while they're here in shelter. Thanks to the Building for Kids, the shelter client advocates are able to provide free day passes to families in shelter. The family is able to use that free day pass as many times as they would like while they're here in shelter, which actually serves as a respite for families who are staying in shelter. It gives them a nice regular time outside of shelter where they can feel like they're not experiencing homelessness for a short period of time. Everyone who enters shelter engages in case management. Case management at the adult and family shelter consists of weekly meetings to help those in shelter remove barriers, meet goals, and move forward in their path toward housing. In addition, case managers work closely with Christy DeChamps, the Appleton Area School District Homeless Liaison, to allow for close collaboration and removal of barriers to education. So I won't go into too much detail about their working relationship since I know Christy will be presenting just after me. The shelter case managers are also connecting clients to community resources, supporting and coaching them throughout their shelter journey, advocating for clients, and appreciating the hard work and grit of their clients. Being in shelter is not easy for anyone, much less families. And Hannah and Brady, the two case managers here, do a great job supporting not only the adults in shelter, but the children too. So if a child is struggling with anything from their day-to-day family issues or their own mental health, the case managers are often there with the shelter client advocates to support that child throughout their shelter journey as well. Case managers work closely with Christy to fill the gaps in each family's needs. So there are some hard to come by school supplies that Christy can help families with, as well as helping to navigate the school enrollment pieces and setting up before and after school care, and then transportation so the family can stay at their home school. And then if anyone has any questions, I can answer those, or we can move forward.
Y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm back. Sorry for our technical difficulties. I wanted to stop sharing the screen so that you all could see each other's faces. And if you have questions for Christine about the shelter before we pass the mic, so to speak, on to our friends at the Appleton Area School District to talk about back to school from their perspective. What questions might you have? Okay, hearing none. I will share the screen, and Pam, I'm going to pass the remote to you. And I think we are back in business here where we need to be. One moment so that I get to the correct slide before we do that. And another moment while I pass the remote, and then you will be in business.
Christy, would you like to just introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I just wanted to say thank you so much for having me today. I always embrace and enjoy opportunities to meet other people who are doing the same good work with some of our families that are really high needs families in our community. So I'm excited to have the opportunity to share a little bit more in depth about what the school district does to support our student and families who are experiencing homelessness. I think sometimes the picture that a lot of people have in our community of what homelessness looks like and how prevalent it is in our area is very different than the reality of it. So I know that I'm probably speaking to the choir, but a lot of the people here also share my passion. But so I've been a school social worker with the Appleton Area School District for, this will be my 8th school year with the Appleton District. So I was a school social worker at one of our high schools at Appleton West for 5 years. And then the most recent 3 years, I've been in this district-wide homeless liaison role. So I do appreciate the opportunity to come and talk to you guys today.
And my name is Pamela Fransky. I have the opportunity and the privilege to be both part of the Appleton Area School District for the last 23 years, as well as for the last couple of years on the Pillars Board of Directors. I also support the program and service team with Pillars. So we have a great relationship, and I appreciate this opportunity. I have been with the school district, as Lisa said, for 23 years, 13 years at Columbus Elementary as an elementary teacher, and then the last 10 years in administration as associate principal. And now you see my many titles. I oversee all of the Title I for the district. That's mostly in our elementary schools as well as in our early childhood programs. I am the Birth to 5 outreach coordinator. Even Start Family Literacy Coordinator, which is a collaboration between Fox Valley Tech, almost a 30-year relationship where parents and children have a wraparound program of learning together. And then now recently, these last couple of years, I've been with Christy as the Homeless Foster Care Director, and I support her administratively. There we go.
There you go.
All right. So today I'm going to focus on the part of my job that supports students experiencing homelessness. I do have another role in the district of working with any of our students who are in the foster care system. But today I'll keep my focus on our students experiencing homelessness. So sometimes the definition that agencies use for homelessness is a little bit different than what's used by school districts. So the McKinney-Vento Act is actually a federal act that defines homelessness and asks that every public school district across the nation has to have somebody designated to be in a McKinney-Vento liaison role to be identifying and then supporting students who are experiencing homelessness. Not all school districts will do what Appleton Area School Districts does with the school social worker. Other districts may have a point of contact, it's an administrator, they may have a school counselor, but Appleton is lucky that they have a full-time position dedicated to helping families that are experiencing homelessness or students that are in the foster care system. So the definition of under McKinney-Vento of homelessness actually covers a very wide range of situations. So it would be any family who's lost housing and is doubled up or sharing housing, a family who's living in a hotel, or our families who are living in shelters such as Pillars. Anyone who's in a transitional living program. So maybe they were in shelter care and now they're in a transitional living program where they have case management and rent assistance for 2 years. They still fall under the McKinney-Vento support with the school district. We may also at times have families who don't have a residence. They might be staying in their vehicle or living in a place that there isn't a place for them to call home. They're staying in a public place. It also covers our unaccompanied homeless youth, which are youth, which in the high school setting, sometimes our youth are even age 18 or 19, but they're living on their own away from parents due to a loss of housing or housing crisis. So it may be kids who've been kicked out. It may be a 17 or 18-year-old who has nowhere to go because their parents are experiencing homelessness and they're living on their own, couch surfing with friends. So the ways that we identify students for support, a lot comes through self-report. So in our online enrollment and school registration process, there is a question about housing. And so families can indicate that they're are in a housing crisis or have lost housing. And then that's one of the ways I find out. They also can tell someone at school. Sometimes they let their teacher know, or their school counselor knows and then will let me know. A lot of times the staff in the district will refer families to me. A child will talk about how, like, we have to live in a hotel because we got kicked out this month. And I also have really good shelter communication, both with Pillars and Harbor House as our two local shelters. We also have families that sometimes stay sheltered out of the area. But any family who's residing in shelter automatically qualifies and is eligible for McKinney-Vento support. And sometimes it's community agency or support programs, or transitional living programs, or W-2 agencies will link parents in with me. So I try really hard to get more education out about the fact that all school districts have a McKinney-Vento liaison, because I think there's a lot of support that not everyone is always aware of exists through the school district. And sometimes we have kids that transfer from one district to another. So I'll get a call from a liaison in Kimberly or down in Oshkosh saying a family is relocating, and then the support that was in that district carries over into ours. So some of the key areas of support for students who are experiencing homelessness, McKinney-Vento support is for the duration of the school year. So we may have a family who isn't homeless in September and then loses housing in October, stays at Pillars for a month, and then finds stable housing and a place to rent. But that support for those students lasts the entire school year in which they're identified. It doesn't carry over from school year to school year. So every year at the beginning of the year, I have to reassess everyone's situation from the prior year and then assess new situations that come my way. So a couple of the key areas that we support is that students experiencing homelessness have a legal right to not have to switch schools. So we call it school of origin. And in Appleton, we're a larger district. We're the 6th largest in the state of Wisconsin. If you move an address, you are probably moving in a different school neighborhood area. And instead of having to move schools because you moved addresses or you're doubled up or at Pillar Shelter, children get to stay at their same school of origin, and the school district, through my coordination, will set up transportation support in order for them to do that. If they're new to our school district, we help with immediate enrollment in school. It's not a barrier that you don't have a residence or you don't have your child's immunization records or birth certificate on you. So we do immediate enrollment in school, and then I can assist with any barriers. We also then authorize free school meals for the school year, waive any school fees, and then any school supplies. As Christine mentioned, Pillars is one of our awesome agencies in the community that if parents are connected with Pillars and in shelter, they get school supplies. But if a family is doubled up with a grandparent or staying in a hotel and they aren't linked into someone, we will, as a school district, provide them backpacks, school supplies, anything that they need for accessing their education. I also assist with basic needs, hygiene care packages, some of the same vouchers that Christine mentioned. We're also part of the Goodwill Good Neighbor programs. So we have the Goodwill vouchers, St. Vincent de Paul referrals. We can help out with different things that families may need to access clothing. And then I help a lot with community resources. I feel really strongly that one of the supports that I help families tap into is all the great resources in our community. I don't want to be the one place that they get their help from. I want to be able to help them understand all the different agencies that can help them in the community. And we also have some special services under Title I reading support that come into place for our elementary school kids who are experiencing homelessness. And then unaccompanied homeless youth who are graduating high school, I do documentation for them to be able to apply for college financial aid without needing information about their parents' income. So they apply as an independent student status, which really helps our kids who are leaving high school and going furthering their education and then not having barriers to doing that when they're not with their parents or maybe don't even know where their parents are living. And so, as I mentioned, my role with the Appleton School District is a full-time role. And I do a lot of my time is spent doing outreach to families, qualifying students under McKinney-Vento, assessing situations, kind of determining what the needs are, and then figuring out who is going to meet those needs. Does the family need to just work with me? Do they need someone at the school to be helping out? And really assessing for each family on an individual basis, what is it that they need? Because every family situation is different. I would say school supplies and basic needs and those community resources tend to be something that a lot of families need assistance linking with. My role in the school district is I coordinate with the school sites. So each of our schools has a school counselor, a school social worker, someone who works with kids with attendance issues. So I do a lot of coordinating with the people who are at the schools, working with the kids, and I have district basic needs classes. So this is mainly stocked with everything that I get from my participation in planning with the Help for the Homeless drive that goes every community in our area that chooses to participate. The Appleton Area School District, and I know Pillars as well, are two of the agencies that are the recipient of the goods. So that helps me to be able to have the basic hygiene items to be able to provide to families. And then I also coordinate with those other school district McKinney-Vento liaisons. As many of you may know from working in our community is that the Fox Valley area isn't just Appleton. So I do a lot of work coordinating with Neenah, Menasha, Kimberly, Kaukauna. We have a lot of families that kind of go in between Oshkosh and Appleton. So I work a lot with other liaisons so that we can have discussions about our kids staying at their school of origin. They may be at Pillars and still wanting to go to school down in Menasha, which they have a right to do. So there's a lot of different coordinating that I do behind the scenes to make sure that what a family needs and wants for their children is something I can help them accomplish. In the community, I'm a point of contact for our shelters and transitional living programs. So kind of the one person I always tell people, just call me and I can help figure it out, and then we'll figure out who else needs to be tapped in. I'm a member of the Fox Cities Housing Coalition. I'm also on the Outagamie County Citizen Review Panel. And then, as I mentioned, I'm part of the Help for the Homeless community drive. I also work closely with our City of Appleton, and we have a new, relatively new, last January, we can do crisis hotel vouchers. And that was something that I worked really hard on with the City of Appleton to be able to help when we were, sometimes there's a crisis where people can't get shelter and we need an immediate crisis option for them. And I also coordinate with a lot of other community programs, home base with the Boys and Girls Club, especially for our unaccompanied homeless youth. I do a lot of work, as does the school district in general, with Partnership Community Health Center to make sure that any health needs or dental needs are being met, and the kids who just need to go in and get a physical. So I work a lot with different agencies and try and connect with them to make sure that we have good partnerships going on. And then also I coordinate a lot with community donors. We have a lot of very generous, wonderful people in our community who reach out and want to help. Church groups or just organizations that are like, hey, we have hats. Or I had a lot of people reach out about masks, like they were making cloth masks and they're like, do your students need masks? Do your parents need masks? And they would donate those type of things to me. And then I in turn can share those with the rest of our staff in the district. So that's a big piece of what I enjoy about my job too, is I get to expand outside of the school boundaries as well. So this is just a little bit of a snapshot. I know people are always curious about like how prevalent is homelessness in our school district. So this past year, I had close to 370 students who I identified as experiencing homelessness. And that was compared to the year prior where I had 301. So it's about 2% of our student population, which is what the state average is. So I would say that we're not really above average. or below, I still think we're probably under identifying some of our homeless situations, especially people who lose housing and double up. They don't even self-recognize that's homelessness and that they're eligible for McKinney-Vento. So these are just students we knew about and were able to identify under McKinney-Vento. And so out of those students, I still had close to 200 that were still in a homeless situation in June. So those are the families that I'll be following up again with now to find out, what happened over summer. Have you established housing? We did have a good number of students who did establish stable housing over the school year. And then we had some students who transfer out of the area. Sometimes they move out of the area, or other things, they make decisions to go to their new resident school. And then we had 8 that graduated. So some of the snapshot too about what's the most prevalent thing that you identify? So I would say the doubled up and sharing housing usually tends to be over half, probably more than that, of our population. This is one of our 1920 school year. So you can see that the most, and this is at the time that I identified them for McKinney-Vento support, that doubled up was the largest population. And then after that, it was our families who were staying in shelter and transitional living. So just a little visual to show you. And then specific to our school pillar collaboration support, Christine and know each other well. We actually talk probably at least once a week during the school year, if not more. But a lot of times families who I'm working with don't know about pillars and all the services. So I feel like I have families in crisis who are either losing housing or they're already homeless and they don't know about pillars, or there's some stigma attached to it. So I take the opportunity to talk with families about, what does family shelter look like? How do you go down and get on the list? Maybe they've heard from a friend, oh, there's a 3-month-long waiting list, I'm not going to bother. So a lot of what I do is trying to kind of reframe it for families who may be hesitant to be going into shelter, but are in a situation that's either not safe or isn't sustainable for them. I try to do a lot of discussion about pre-planning. Like if you're at a hotel, but you can't pay for more than a week, here's how you go down and get on the intake list for pillars. And then I can also make referrals or link families in with the prevention and diversion program at Pillars. So I know sometimes that families are they're doubled up and sharing housing. It's somewhat stable. They can stay as long as they need, but it's not really a long-term solution. I can make a referral to the prevention and diversion program so that they can find stable housing, even though they may not be in immediate crisis and do have a place to stay. And then I also can consult with Pillars about the ability for families to return to shelter. I have some families that sometimes make the decision on their own to leave shelter. And unfortunately, the reason they're leaving shelter doesn't pan out, and then they're back in crisis again. And so sometimes I help them with understanding the process, or even calling to find out, is it an option for them to come back to Pillars? Can they appeal? And helping them understand that process. So students who are at Pillars Family Shelter, we have a number of families that when they go to Pillars, they're already students in our district. So if they're already current students and they're going to Pillars, I assess, well, where are they enrolled in school? Because if they were living on the north side of town and now they're at Pillars, and they don't have a way for their child to get to stay at their school, then I can arrange transportation. So if it's a current school district family, the school of origin and transportation needs are kind of an immediate thing that I help assess. If it's a new to Appleton family, then the Pillars case managers usually will help them do their enrollment at the school, and the school assigned to Pillars would be Columbus Elementary School, Kaleidoscope Middle School, and Appleton North High School. And so getting them enrolled in those schools, and then when the family leaves shelter, that school is their school of origin. So after they maybe move out into housing or find a different living situation, I help those kids stay at the school that they're at when they were at shelter and enrolled in our districts. So assessing of needs too, as Christine mentioned, sometimes Pillars has everything a family needs, and sometimes there's certain things that we have school supplies, but they still, they need help figuring out before and after school care. So I can coordinate with what needs are being met, what needs can I maybe in a different way, and we collaborate together on that. I also work with the shelter case managers, just knowing like what housing referrals are being done. Are there any needed supports or services that maybe it's something I can help out with or I have a resource for? And if things come up like school attendance, we may have a school that, they call me up and they're like, hey, you know, Jimmy hasn't been to school all week. Do you know what's going on? And I can call Pillars and ask the case manager. If I can't, maybe the parent doesn't get back to me and I can say, hey, do you know what's going on? Can you just check with the family, see if there's a barrier? Sometimes it's an easy thing like, well, they didn't know where to go stand to get to the bus. Or mom said she forgot the time that the bus came in the morning. And so when we can figure out what the barriers are, we can work together to support the family to be able to find a solution to the problem. And then at the time that they move in and move out from shelter is a critical time for us to coordinate support. Sometimes families move out unexpectedly, which then tends to be a little bit of a, like what were they getting at Pillars? What can I pick up from there? And sometimes it's a planned move. So if we knew a family found stable housing and they're moving out in 2 weeks, I can pre-plan for transportation needs, for keeping them at their same school of origin. Were there things they were getting from Pillars that now the family is going to have to self-sustain with? So a lot of that is just us coordinating our services to make sure a family has as smooth a transition as possible and understands how to tap into those resources and needs. And also during especially the past school year, I would say when school was kind of ever changing and the COVID pandemic, and there were so many things that there were a lot of moving pieces and it was very complicated. And I know that our agencies and Pillars as a shelter, I figured it was probably pretty complicated for them to understand what was going on with the school district. So we had a family message that went out every week to families in the district explaining, here are the changes that are coming, or this is what we're doing now, or here's why we're making our decisions. And I would share that with our key shelter staff people so that they would know that if a family maybe didn't read their email, this is what was happening in the district. Or if they had questions or knew like, hey, the transition back to in-person school is happening in the middle of January. And I found that really helped our coordination together for the staff at the shelter to be able to know what the school district was doing. And so we can work in partnership with our communication. We do have a memorandum of understanding between the district and the shelter that allows for some general communication. And then as Christine mentioned, when families move in, they actually sign a permission form allowing the shelter case managers and advocates to be able to talk with me, to be able to coordinate different things and talk about their situation. And then I'll let Pam talk a little bit about how her role in being my supervisor and being involved with Pillars is really such a benefit to us.
So as you can see, Christy has a huge role with 16,000 students in the Appleton Area School District, and a large percentage, as you saw with the data, of those being homeless. I was brought into this role. You heard her share the Title I role. That's some funding sources that we can support. I oversee that at the elementary level. Any child that is not in a Title I building is eligible for extra assistance in reading or literacy for our families experiencing homelessness or our students experiencing homelessness at the elementary level. So I oversee that area. I also oversee a lot of early childhood programming. And as you can see on there, on that last bullet there, those future focus, Christy and I meet almost on a daily basis. Some of those times is just like she wants to run something by me. Might be a triage where we have to figure out, is there some administrative things that I have to do on my end? I oversee the budgets. I help her. My secretary assistant helps me with gas cards or credit card all the behind the scenes, so that Christy does not have to deal with that. We also support each other, especially with the data part of that. But I also have invested in a lot of programs that I oversee have early childhood. We are very unique in the Appleton Area School District to have a birth to 5 outreach team that supports non-school age children from birth. So it is really one goal that Christy and I have is to connect families that do have maybe an infant or toddler seeking maybe some support as far as maybe they need a developmental screening, or maybe they are looking for programming, and then we can expedite that as quickly as possible. I think it's also really important that in our collaboration and support of each other, Pillars and AASD, that I am a representative on the Pillars Board of Directors, and I feel that is such an opportunity so that the communication can stay open. And then when Christy suggested the memorandum of understanding as well, that's an ever evolving. We're working with the Pillars leadership team to try to have no barriers in our communication, so that we are constantly in support of each other, and that makes it nice and smooth for our relationship. So that's just, you may not see me a lot in all of this, but it's all Christy. I swear to goodness, she is the best person in this position, and I'm so thankful to have her. And our district is very thankful to have her. So she makes my job really easy.
Thank you, Pam. This is just some information I put on here, and I don't know if anyone is ever looking for different resources or kind of a little bit more about McKinney-Vento. I had listed my website on there. I don't think I have the power to click and show what it looks like, but one of the things that I made a very concerted effort to do and change about my role is when schools were closed in person and every virtual, I had to kind of refigure my whole job of how do I support families when all I'm doing is making phone calls and sending links on emails. So I really revamped my website to be a go-to place for resources. And I'm really working hard on having that be a place where others in the district know to go there too. So I have a lot of different housing resources. I've made it a point to stay very up to date on all the eviction moratoriums and paperwork and what do people need and how do you access food in the community. There just was so many changes with the pandemic and how agencies were running, how families could access services, and families in crisis don't have the time to look for all that information. They just need help. And so if I can break down some of those barriers and put all the resources in one place on my website, and I have tabs on the bottom of it. So any families who need that information or maybe hesitant to call, sometimes if they just kind of look and see, oh, this is what I can all get help with. I think it sometimes breaks down even the stigma of asking for help or families having to admit that they're in crisis. So on my school district website, I have a lot of resources so that families don't necessarily have to like have me send them an email link. It's all right there. And then I just feel like it's a really good way to link them in with the support that they need.
Christy, because that screen disappeared maybe sooner than folks could take notes, what is your website so that I could put it in the chat?
Well, and the easiest way probably to find it is if you just like go to AASD, like the main school district website, and it's like under families, underneath it, it'll say homeless student support services.
Thank you.
So, and I just, I'm very appreciative to all the coordination and collaboration that I've been able to do with Pillars. I know that Christine and I have a lot of brainstorming sessions about like new ways we want to do stuff or just ways that we think it can work better for our families that are staying at shelter or are in crisis. So I just wanted to say thank you. There's so many of you on here I know that I've probably either talked to or you've been behind the scenes on stuff. So I do appreciate the partnership we have. And I feel like the better partnership and communication and collaboration we can do, the more we can help families get out of their homelessness crisis and back into stable housing.
Thank you so much. I hope that you all are feeling as inspired as I am. I have learned a lot and I work here. So I have learned a lot about how we collaborate, and it's such a beautiful thing to see so many people wrapping around these vulnerable children in our community. And whether you're a donor, whether you're a volunteer, whether you're a funder, you are a part of that. You are a part of making that happen. A couple of things I wanted to ask quickly, Christy, if folks want to support your basic needs closet, do they go to your website and will that list needs that you have, or how do they find out what's most needed?
I actually don't have a list on there, but if anyone wants to, either my email address and phone number are on the website there. So anyone can feel free to reach out. I have conversations with people, and a lot of it has to do with like their desire and what do they want to do. Some people want to donate gift cards. Some people want to donate, like we have a women's group and we want to do a project. What can we do for you? And so it's really based on what someone's interest is and where they want to kind of focus. But I'm always happy to have those conversations.
And please feel free to reach out to me as well, because obviously I have several groups that I oversee that any of them could use some volunteers and assistance with our families.
Thank you. I am going to pop up one more slide for y'all so you can see how to support basic needs for kids from the Pillars side. And that is to go to our website, pillarsinc.org, and there's a donate button that you can click your way through to our wish list. We also post most needed, urgently needed items on our social media. So you see those accounts here and can find information there. While I have this slide up, just going to mention our next Conversations Over Coffee is Thursday, October 7th. Mark your calendar. Registration for that will open soon. And does anyone have questions that they want to ask? We don't have a lot of time. I'm happy to stay a little bit longer if presenters are as well. Any questions out there?
What happens to the kids in summer?
That's a great question.
School district support, or are you wondering about the shelter care in summer?
The students that you're helping in the school district, what happens to them in the summer?
So my job is technically during the school year. So during the summer, we have some outreach teams within the community that there were some new advocates hired for. So if a family is one that's going to need support or services over the summer, that's when a lot of those community resources come into play. And so a lot of pre-planning at the end of the school year about how families are going to be okay over the summer is what I do with them. So although they don't have me, they kind of know other people within the community who they can connect with. And a lot of times, the main focus of my job, according to the Department of Public Instruction, is educational access. So I think like technically my job is making sure kids have access to school. In my social work heart, I know that really it's about supporting the whole family. So sometimes those school needs in the summer, although I do assess like, are the kids going to summer school? What needs are related to that? But the housing needs that they have, I just make sure that they're linked in with other community partners to help with that. And then that's why in August, I start planning for the school year again, so I can figure out, okay, where are you staying now? Where are we, what do you need to get ready for school? How can I help you?
I would also suggest that we do our very best. A lot of our principals work closely with the families to ensure that child is in their school or connected to programming like the Birth to Five Outreach does summer programming in all the parks, or Appleton Rec Department. And then we do have a relationship with Boys and Girls Club so that some of our children are going there. But I'm sure Christine can answer even more as to where do the children go during that time.
Yeah, we find that we are helping a lot of families connect with the Boys and Girls Club summer programs so that they are engaged in activities, structured activity during the day, and that allows the parents still time to work during the day.
I have a question. I wondered about, is there any coordination with refugee families that come into the area through Pillars?
Right now, we don't have any specific coordination with refugee families. I think the only service provider that I know of, and Christy, you may know of another one that targets refugee families, would be Forward Services.
We also have through the Appleton Area School District a refugee liaison, Chris Sparkman, who works with families that have children that are school age. So I'm in constant communication with Chris because the fact that I oversee Even Start Family Literacy, which is obviously a program for a parent to go to school to learn a second language or to get their GED while their infant, toddler, or preschooler is in class. Well, so I oversee the early childhood part of that. So I have been in contact with Chris almost all summer, along with Swahili refugees are our highest right now. So we have several families that entered the area, and we are getting them registered for school. We're getting them into early childhood programming if needed. We're getting them screened. We're connecting the dots as far as resources. But none of our refugees have had, so far, have had a circumstance where they are experiencing homelessness at this time.
And a lot of our refugees that are coming here in Appleton and the Fox Cities is their placement, their first placement in the United States. World Relief will be working with them for that whole first year. Actually, the refugee families that I find that I work the most with for the McKinney-Vento homelessness is families that are up here in our area, refugee families up here who have friends who they also are refugees that maybe were placed down in Chicago, and they have their first year down in the Chicago area, and they've heard, to our credit, wonderful things about the Fox Valley area. So we have a lot of what I would say like relocating refugee families. They've spent their first year in their placement like they're supposed to with their program and getting all the support. After a year, a lot of that pretty intensive first arrival support ends, and they relocate up here, and not all of them have housing. So I worked with especially this past year, more and more families who were like, the family that was in our school district was like, but our friends are coming, and it's a family with their 4 kids. So that family that was moving in and doubled up all under my McKinney-Vento support, I'm able to support them with the supplies, the school enrollment. And then once they move into their own place and find housing, they're then able to stay at that same school their kids have gone to. So like Pam said, I also work a lot with Chris Sparkman, with our different support people within the district that can talk with families in their own language. So I think it's more not those first arrivals, but like secondary, like they're relocating here after a year, and then they're potentially in a homeless situation.
We also have several classrooms throughout the district that are newcomer classrooms that they would, and that's another connection that we get, Christy and I.
I want to be respectful of time. Thank you, Pam and Christy, for joining us this morning. Christine, thank you for your time to prepare and to share the story of kids at our adult and family shelter. We really appreciate all of your interest, your attention, and just knowing that there are other folks out there who care about these vulnerable kids and want to do what they can to wrap around them and provide what they need to succeed in school. I put my email address in the chat if you have additional questions. I don't know about you, but I could talk for another hour. I have plenty of questions myself. So we will be sending you what will be a disjointed recording, possibly, of this morning's event. So you can backtrack through it, share it with others. But if you do have questions, please me. I will be sure either Christine or Christy gets you an answer. I really appreciate your attention. Come on back October 7th. Join us again. We'll see you soon.